Hello and welcome to the Ultimate Decades recap for the 1330s. This is probably going to be a long one. The decade started off, as it always does, at home with the Fairbairns, doing our tillage roll, which was 20% of our lot value this time round. Not too bad, and definitely something the Fairbairns could pay off. Ada and Alison spent a little bit of time bonding with each other near the lake, and they had an impromptu swimming session. The start to a strong friendship between these two generations, considering these girls are only a couple months apart. At the Boyds, John aged up into an infant and took after his mum, becoming Christian and Evelyn's first blonde child and a first for this branch of the family. At the Reed household, Connell also aged up into an infant, taking after his mum in both his hair and colouring. Eric aged up into a teen, the youngest child in the McIntyre family for Gen 2, rolling to get married but have no children, leading to a swift rule change and allowing him one baby try in the distant future. The death of Sir James Douglas, our feudal lord, who passed away during an overseas campaign, led to a new lord's tax roll, which could mean life or death for the Fairbairns during their harvest periods. A 3 was rolled, and so the tax went up from 10% to 30%, with a total of 40% taxes for harvests and sales. Maud gave birth to a boy, Ronald MacDonald, a funny name which wouldn't last very long as he failed his rolls, passing from a low birth weight. Another loss for the MacDonalds, who were still grieving the loss of their other son, Wallace, from the year prior. Charlotte also gave birth to a boy who was named Alexander. Unfortunately, he was unsuccessful with his rolls, passing from falling out of his crib, causing such deep sadness right before James and Marsley got married. Many families came over, ranging from those living nearby to members from the Highlands. A great turnout considering James isn't the heir. With a ferocious storm, James and Marsley got married indoors, surrounded by family and the warmth of the fire, and with it the hope of a successful lineage. Continuing on with the theme, Jane also gave birth to a boy named Torquil, who survived his rolls. The final birth for the year was over at the Campbell household, with Agnes giving birth to a boy named Brian. He also survived his rolls. Agnes didn't survive her birth rolls, landing on a 1, and she would have passed away if it wasn't for Billy's successful plea which brought her back to life. Immediately after, because I apparently like to make myself anxious, she rolled for her birthday into a young adult and was thankfully safe. Maggie also did her roll to become a young adult and was successful, rounding out the birthdays for the year. These two couples, the Campbells and McClearys, also solidified their respective unions by getting married at the end of the year. In a turn of events, it was immediately after Agnes and Billy's marriage that Billy discovered his soulmate was none other than Agnes's aunt, Katrina, who was a generation older than him and already had a successful marriage and family, so this was totally off limits. A thunderstorm to start 1331 meant that family bonding was due, as there wasn't many outdoor chores to do. This wet weather did mean one great thing though: the tax collector slipped in the mud, which was only funny until Charlotte did it, and then I wasn't laughing anymore. Kenna aged up into a child successfully, and was essentially dressed to look like Maud when she was a child. The Reed household got a small upgrade, allowing for more room for the growing family. Caitlin did her role to become a young adult and was successful, and to celebrate, she got properly married to Lewis the next day, with all the Boyds in attendance. It was Michael's turn to age up into a toddler, and with the Campbells' success rate, this was a nerve-wracking role. Unfortunately, he did not succeed, passing from a fatal flaw. Agnes's plea was unsuccessful, meaning his younger brother Brian, who'd just aged up into an infant, would be the only Campbell child for a while. With death comes new life, so Marsley went into labour, giving birth to Effie Fairbairn, who thankfully survived her rolls. And James spent some time hanging out with his grandfather's ghost, thanks to a nighttime visit. At the McIntyres, Alwyn survived his toddler age-up and Torquil became an infant. And at the Boyd and Reed households, John and Connell also aged up into toddlers. The young bachelors of the Boyd and McIntyre families spent some time at the local inn, hoping to find a partner, even moving the gathering to the park and the Fairbairn lot, but no one was successful. Jane ended the year giving birth to another baby boy, Gunnar, who didn't survive his rolls, passing from a birth defect. 1332 started with war rolls for the beginning of the Second Scottish War of Independence, with Dougal, James, Owen, Christian, Finian, and David all going off to war. Caitlin gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Andrew, Agnes gave birth to a boy, Ian, who passed from a birth defect. Charlotte gave birth to Domhnall, granting the Fairbairns with an heir, and Evelyn gave birth to her last baby, Iona, who passed from falling out of her crib, just like her two older siblings, Eleanor and Jemima, an unfortunate theme amongst the girls in this family. Evelyn had also failed her labour role, and would have succumbed to death if Colin hadn't successfully pled for her to live, sparing the boys from even more grief immediately after losing Iona. Tensions running high meant it was perfect timing to roll for Jessie's child age-up, which she thankfully passed, as the grief Christian would have had to face when he came home from war would have been astounding. I was so excited to see what Domhnall looks like that he was aged up into an infant prematurely, but it was good to see that he is a little cutie. Andrew Reid and Effie Fairbairn had also aged up into infants, and Brian and Torquil both aged up into toddlers, successfully. A great win, especially for the Campbell family. Oswald took Eric out to the famous inn to find a match, as he was pretty desperate to get his brother married off. Funnily enough, whilst using the bathroom, Eric met an extremely attractive sim, Marion Black, who he seemed to get along with quite well. At the end of the year, Maggie gave birth to another girl, Thora McCleary, who survived her roles, and Harriet aged up into a child, looking like a mini version of her mum. In 1333, the Fairbairns visited the church to mourn their lost family members and spend time with James's family whilst he was off at war, although it would seem that Marsley doesn't really get along with this side of the family. Clary finally got a cat and adopted little Cooper into the family. Another roll for the Lord's tax was due, as our feudal lord had died in battle again, this time against the English, landing on a 3, so the 30% tax stayed the same. The birthday rolls for the year started over at the war camp for Dougal's young adult age-up, which he thankfully passed, as he is very much needed in his family, and he celebrated with his cousins and some new mates. Maud gave birth to Walter, who survived his roles, finally granting the MacDonalds with another son, after the loss of Wallace and Ronald. Thora aged up into an infant. Agnes gave birth to twins, Tavish and Morag, with only Morag surviving, as Tavish passed from falling out of his crib. Jane also gave birth to twins, Astrid and Leif, and both survived, increasing the number of successful births in the McIntyre household. Eric spent some time trying to get to know Marion better, though he was left to waiting for a mistletoe kiss that never came. Effie aged up into a toddler, though she refused to age up like a normal sim and use a birthday cake, and maybe that's why she aged up a little grumpy looking. Fergus safely aged up into an elder, signalling that sooner or later, Gen 1 would be coming to an end. But on the bright side, he received some new winter clothes. Walter aged up into an infant back at the castle, and Eric spent more time getting to know the girls at the inn, and it seemed that he liked Marion the best. At the beginning of 1334, Morag, Campbell, and Astrid and Leif McIntyre all aged up into infants. Fantastic news, because who doesn't love crying babies? The theme of elder roles was quite prominent this year, starting at the Boyd household for Hendry's age-up, which he passed, joining his mother in elderhood. To celebrate, a party was thrown, inviting over Boyd family members that they hadn't seen in a while. Hendry also thought now was the perfect time to become unflirty, though he was promptly denied. This time was also used to check in on new families like the Reeds, who were filling Katrina in on married life and babies. There was more cause for celebration for the Reeds as Andrew aged up into a toddler. Everyone at war returned home, with only Dougal, Finian and David getting some war consequences, which were thankfully positive. Clary worked on making a pie to celebrate Dougal's safe return home, and Domhnall failed his age up into a toddler, rolling to die from drowning, just moments after finally meeting his dad. Thankfully, Fergus's plea to Grim was heard, and their heir was saved. Clary did her role to become an elder and passed, also acquiring new winter clothes for her aging body. Thornfinn also rolled to become an elder, and Olwen to become a child, and both failed their roles. Thornfinn wasn't saved, but Olwen was thanks to Oswald's plea. Eric invited Marion over to hang out and get to know each other, and before they knew it, they were engaged and getting married the next day. John aged up into a child, and Katrina passed her elder role, the last for Gen 1. Connell also aged up into a child, and whilst blowing out his candles, Caitlin went into labour. This pregnancy was her last baby try, giving birth to Neil, who survived, but unfortunately Caitlin didn't. Grim, after saving Domhnall and Olwen's lives, wasn't generous enough for the Reeds, and so Caitlin succumbed to death, passing from a milky leg and leaving Lewis to look after their kids. Maggie also gave birth to her last baby, Inga, who survived her roles, along with Thora, who aged up into a toddler. Alison MacDonald's teen birthday had finally arrived, and she'd passed, becoming the first teen of Gen 3. She also rolled to get married and have 6 baby tries. Marsley gave birth to another boy, Gillian, who passed from a low birth weight. David ended the year with a romantic escapade at his local tavern with Alice Mercer, who happened to be his soulmate, a relationship that his older brother Finian didn't seem too fond of. 1335 was a very busy year for birthdays. Ada started the year with her teenage role, successfully passing and rolling to get married and have 9 baby tries. Brian rolled to become a child and did so successfully, a significant moment for the Campbells, who hadn't had a child survive past toddlerhood up until now. Unfortunately, Brian's birthday celebration of going hunting with his dad took a horrible turn, as Billy came home with a life-threatening injury. This time round, no attempts to plead with Grim were allowed, and his soul was whisked away without a goodbye, leaving Agnes with 2 living children and another on the way. Grim clearly wasn't fussed about this, though, as he went off to play some archery. Charlotte gave birth to another boy named Ewan, who survived, which meant we now had an heir and a spare. Neil Reed and Inga McCleary both aged up into infants. Over at the castle, it was time for a birthday and a birth. Walter aged up into a cute little toddler, his swooped back hair making him look very princely, and Maud gave birth to another baby, little Ekin. The last baby for the MacDonald family, he unfortunately didn't survive his roles, but was saved by his stalwart parents, a wonderful option on the wheel of demise to potentially save some babies. Jameson also did his role into an adult, which he also passed. There was a total of 4 McIntyre birthdays this year, with Owen, Torquil, Astrid and Leif all aging up safely into young adult, child and toddlers respectively. Jane also gave birth to another baby, and another boy, named Thorsten, in honour of his late grandfather. He also didn't pass his role, but the wheel was very nice that day, and landed on saved by stalwart parents again. It was beginning to seem like a very lucky year. It was Colin's turn to age up into a teenager, which he did successfully, rolling to get married and have 4 baby tries. To celebrate this good news, Alba threw him a birthday party, and invited David's lover and soulmate, Alice, who appeared to be pregnant, causing further trouble with David and Finian, despite their parents and grandparent being okay with the situation. The hint of marriage made David run away, causing immense heartbreak throughout the family, and Alba's death. Ultimately, Colin's birthday was depressing for everyone involved. James Fairbairn aged up into a young adult, and Effie got to hang out with her great-grandfather's ghost. Ewan aged up into an infant with gorgeous green eyes, and Ekin followed suit into the next life stage. Ada and Allison popped off to the inn to make new friends and potential partners, but found no one attractive. They did get to know Eric and Marion, and Allison and Ada finally became best friends. When they were about to leave, Brian Murray arrived, but neither girl was interested. The year ended at the Campbells, with Morag's birthday into a toddler, and Agnes gave birth to another little girl named Willa in honour of her father, but she was unsuccessful with her roles, passing from being Breach. 1336 began with war rolls, and this time around, Eric was the only sim sent off to the campaigns. Thorsten aged up into an infant, and Owen spent the day hanging out with single ladies, hoping to find a good match. And it seems like he connected the best with Isla Blair. Alice gave birth to David's first child, Callum, and both mum and baby survived, unbeknownst to David, who was nowhere to be found. Thankfully, Katrina was there to warmly welcome the baby into the Boyd family. Ada paid Maud a visit at the castle, whilst her niece, Matilda, aged up into a teenager, rolling to get married and have only 3 baby tries. Another teenager meant another search for a husband, with Matilda finding Lachlan Bain and Rory McDara attractive almost immediately upon aging up. Marsley gave birth to Murdoch, who survived his roles. Unfortunately, his older sister Effie didn't survive her child roles, passing from neglect as Grimm refused James's plea. Finian aged up into a young adult, and like everyone else this year, spent time looking for the perfect match. Alas, it wasn't Finian, but Colin who found his match in Bridget Sinclair. These teenagers are having better luck finding partners than the stragglers from Gen 2. Neil Reed and Inga McCleary both aged up into toddlers, the youngest babies in their respective households growing up so quickly. Ada also spent some time looking for a match, but wasn't particularly keen on anyone. The year ended at the McIntyre house, with Jane safely rolling to become an adult and giving birth to another baby, little Arn, who survived his roles. 1337 started over at the Reed household for Andrew's age up into a child, opening the year on a potentially bad note as he failed his role. Thankfully, he was saved by his older brother Connell, whose pleas were heard by Grimm. Ada and Allison continued getting to know potential partners, with Ada finding Sawley MacIver, Lachlan Bain, and Gavin Kirkland the most attractive out of the bunch. I guess a few months can really make a difference on one's judgment. Domhnall and Ewan both successfully aged up into child and toddler respectively, a great success for the main household, meaning a birthday party should be thrown. But in typical Sims fashion, nothing went to plan. At the castle, Maud and Ekin both successfully aged up into adult and toddler. Alison went on a date with Rory around the castle, and they seemed to hit it off. Maud also maxed out her cooking skill, a very proud moment, especially for her role as the palace cook. Torsten failed his role to become a toddler, passing from freezing to death. Luckily, Oswald's plea for his son's life didn't land on deaf ears, and he was saved, avoiding another death for the year. Surprisingly, Grimm was being generous. It was finally time to see what kind of trouble David Boyd had gotten himself into all the way over in southern France. Yep, that's right. He was so terrified of marriage he left Scotland and fled to another kingdom state. Lucky for him, he passed his young adult roles, and to celebrate, he got to know one of the local ladies a bit better. He also managed to escape joining the war effort against England, instead staying at the inn to engage in more shenanigans. Marsley safely rolled to become a young adult, but couldn't celebrate her birthday as she was pregnant. Lewis Reed and Arthur McCleary both successfully aged up into adults, and Thora McCleary also aged up into a child. Ada went on a date with Sorley MacGyver at their local park and quickly became romantic partners after enjoying each other's company. Also this year, Murdoch Fairbairn and Anne McIntyre aged up into infants, with Murdoch looking particularly grumpy about his existence. 1338 began with 3 weddings: Agnes and Malcolm, Owen and Isla, and Finian and Saoirse. Eric safely came home from war and with no consequences whatsoever. Jane went into labour for the millionth time, giving birth to Sigrid, who survived her roles. At the main household, it was Kenna's turn to age up into a teen, safely passing her roles and rolling to get married and have 10 baby tries. Charlotte gave birth to her first little girl, Lady, who survived her roles as well. Clary spent some time bonding with Cooper. Callum Boyd, now going by Callum Anderson, as Alice got married to Thomas Anderson, a merchant, aged up into a toddler. Walter MacDonald aged up into a child, and Alison invited Rory over for a little date, which went so well they wanted to woohoo, and then got engaged not too soon after. Marsley gave birth to a little girl, Elsbeth, who survived her roles and beat the curse on reusing names. Murdoch also safely aged up into a toddler, still looking grumpy as ever. Over at the McIntyres, Astrid and Leif safely aged up into children, Arn into a toddler, and Sigrid became an infant. Morag became a child and spent some time bonding with her family and her new stepdad. Christian rolled to become an adult and failed, rolling in secret to see how much time he has left. Isabeau, the French lady, gave birth to David's second child, another boy named Francois, who survived his roles and would potentially go on to grow up knowing about his father or not. Charlotte rolled to become an adult and survived, and Lady became an infant. Kenna found her soulmate in John McInnes, which was pretty impressive considering she just became a teen. Isla gave birth to her first baby, Frida, who didn't survive her roles, passing from malnutrition, a sad loss for the start of a new family. Alison and Rory ended the year by getting married in front of the castle, a typical Sims wedding, but it marked the quiet beginning of Gen 4. Isla started off 1339 on a happier note than the end of last year, by successfully aging up into a young adult. Marion gave birth to her first and only baby, a boy named Magnus, who didn't survive his roles, passing from falling out of his crib. Saoirse gave birth to twins, Ailey and Finley, with Finley surviving and Ailey passing from a heart defect. Saoirse also failed her labour role, but Finian was successful in pleading for her life and she was saved. Eric passed his role to become a young adult, leaving him and Marion with mixed emotions as they'd just lost their son. Ada and Sorley got engaged to each other and then got married the next day. Jane gave birth again to Ranild, a baby girl who survived her roles, with 8 McIntyre babies having survived their roles so far in Gen 3, something that never occurred in Gen 2. It's safe to say that Jane could use an indefinite break from pregnancy. It was time for Jessie to age up into a teenager as she'd passed her roles, deciding to get married and have only 2 baby tries, an amount that makes me worry for the Boyd family in the future. Colin got to know Bridget a bit better, considering they were getting married this year. Unfortunately, his first proposal was rejected, leaving him feeling a bit stung. In other news, Evelyn safely aged up into an adult, and Marsley gave birth to Edward Fairbairn, who survived his roles. Agnes also gave birth to Margaret, who survived her roles and beat the odds, especially when it comes to using a cursed name. After talking his feelings out with his dad, Colin felt a bit more confident and tried his luck a second time and got engaged to Bridget, eloping in the backyard at night. Content with Colin's union to Bridget and her life, raising her children and grandchildren, making friends, and having a great love, Katrina succumbed to arthritis and died at the age of 51, leaving only a few Sims left in Gen 1 behind. Unfortunately, there was no time to mourn as Alison went into labour, giving birth to Caelan McDara, the first baby for Gen 4, and as with death comes new life, he survived his roles. Matilda spent some time looking for a match but wasn't particularly keen on anyone in her group. Inga and Harriet McCleary aged up into child and teen respectively. Harriet, who looks like a mini Maggie, rolled to get married and have 3 baby tries. It seems the die is set on giving small numbers. The last birthday for the decade was Neil Reed, who safely aged up into a child. And the infants for this year were Elspeth Fairbairn, Francois de Isabeau, Finley Boyd, and Ranald McIntyre. Now that the yearly recaps are done, let's quickly jump into the stats and family tree, which are my favourite part. Okay, so we are looking at our lovely spreadsheet and the Sims info. I won't go very much into depth about what's going on here because I just went over it. This is our first gen family. This is the main household. Obviously, David and Deirdre have passed away quite a while ago, and the only living Sim in this block is Fergus, our Gen 1 heir. His sisters have passed away. We then have his family, and at the moment, most Sims are alive. His youngest children just aged up into teens, and will slowly but surely start new families. We then have the Boyds, and most of these Sims have passed away. Hendry and Christian have rolled to pass away within this next decade. And then we'll only have Finian and David left from Gen 2, which is insane to think about. Caitlin did pass away this decade at the age of 24. For the McIntyres, they only have 4 Sims alive as well. Thornfinn passed away the same year as Caitlin, but at the age of 47, just from sudden death. So the only Sims left are Oswald, Maggie, Owen, and Eric. The McDonalds are doing quite well. They have lost 3 babies, 1 as a toddler, 2 of them being boys, but they have an even number with 2 girls and 2 boys, and Alison is already married. Then we have Christian and Evelyn's little family, and out of the 5 babies that they had, only 3 of them survived, and 3 of them all died the same way, which maybe they need to get their crib fixed, God knows. For the McIntyres, for Gen 3, they have done significantly better than Gen 2, if you just look at those stats. A lot of these deceased names are babies who died as babies: Oscar, Cormac, Magnus, Norman, Marjorie. I forgot how to pronounce his name. So they've had 8 babies so far survive, and I have capped her. She did have 11 baby tries, and she's had a couple twins, but she has donated her last 2 baby tries to someone else in the family who needs them a bit more than she does. I think the McIntyres, the main McIntyres, are fine. They don't need any more kids. We then have the Campbell family, which just never seem to have any good luck. They've only got 2 kids that have survived so far, and Billy also passed away. But Agnes did get remarried, and she found her soulmate in Malcolm McFinley, and they've had 1 daughter so far with Margaret, and then she's got a few more baby tries left. I'm going to let her try for them because she doesn't have that many kids, and knowing her success rate, I'm not sure how well she's going to go. We then have the McCleary household. They've had 2 Sims pass away as babies, but 3 daughters are alive. They had 1 son, and he didn't survive. At the Reed household, they had 4 babies, all boys that have survived, and Flora died as a baby, and her mum also died in childbirth, giving birth to Neil. We then have our heir, Dougal, and Charlotte, and they have 12 baby tries. They've only had 4 babies so far, but 1 has passed away, so they're actually doing quite well. She just doesn't seem to get pregnant as often. If you can see the gap, she gave birth first in 1330, and her last baby was in 1338, but the gaps between her labour are long. So I would say Charlotte's not very fertile. She kind of struggles to give birth, but at the moment, Domhnall is on track to age up and be safe, and we've got Ewan as a spare, so I'm not too stressed about Charlotte filling out these bars here because I don't need that many Sims in the main household, though the plague is approaching, so I might be eating my words soon. Owen and Isla have just started their family. They've got 12 baby tries and currently no surviving children. So we will see what the 1340s has to bring for this family. James and Marsley have had quite a few kids out of the 11 I think he rolled to have. 2 of them have passed away. Effie was a child. So their eldest was born in 1336, and that's Murdoch, and they got married in 1330. So that's a 6-year difference between when they got married and their eldest surviving child at the moment. Yet again, I'm not too sure if they will fill these out. The rule that I have written for myself now is if they have enough surviving children, they can donate the remaining baby tries to someone in the family in their direct branch. So it has to be a Fairbairn gives it to a Fairbairn, a Boyd gives it to a Boyd, so on and so forth. So if Maud needed it, she's still technically a Fairbairn, so someone could have donated a baby try to her, but she doesn't need it. Jane donated her baby tries to Marion, so Marion's got another 2 baby tries to do. So that's how it's going to work, because I want to keep the tries within those branches of the family. Finian and Saoirse have had twins. I can't remember how many baby tries he has. I think it's 4. So we will see how this goes. David has had a baby with his soulmate, Alice. He does have 7 baby tries, but I don't know what the shenanigans he's going to get up to. And then he's had a baby with Isabeau, so he's got 2 kids at the moment, Callum and Francois. And they're 2 different nationalities. And so hopefully Francois survives, because I'd like to have more French Sims. Eric and Marion, we just went over. Magnus seems to be a cursed name, and I'm contemplating if I really want to use it, I will need to name a sim that gets married into the family Magnus, because I don't know if I'll ever be able to use this name. Ada and Solly are married, but they haven't had a child yet. Kenna and John aren't married yet. They're getting married in 1342, but they're here, they're ready. She's got a lot of baby tries. Alison and Rory got married in 1338, and they've had 1 baby so far out of the 6 baby tries I think she has, and Kaylin has survived so far. Colin and Bridget have 4 baby tries, and she will give birth at the beginning of the decade. She should give birth, so that will be exciting and nerve-wracking. And then we have Matilda. She's got all her information filled out with Lachlan Bain, and Jessie and Harriet are waiting. And as you can see, the big numbers that we were getting for the baby tries has sort of died off, which I would be happy about for sim population, but I know the plague's coming, so I actually need more baby tries. Let's just hope a lot of these babies survive, and then if they all survive the plague, that's just a problem for later on. We can see we've had 52 female sims and 63 male sims. The age of death is always predominantly babies, so we've had 35 babies in the span of this challenge so far that have passed away. 4 toddlers, 2 children, 1 teen, 2 young adults, 1 adult, and 4 elders. We have 113 Scottish sims and 2 French sims, and then this is what our offspring generation thingy looks like. I'm not sure Gen 4 is going to beat out Gen 3 at this point, but we'll see. There's so many sims that are set to become a teen in the next decade. And this is new, and it's honestly one of my favorites. It is the cause of death. I just thought it would be honestly interesting to see predominantly what's taking up statistically causing people to die, and it's malnutrition at the moment. We're going to move on to the family tree, and this is what it looks like. It's quite spread out. It's great. I enjoy doing this. As we can see, Agnes has a new main partner, and so they will kind of push these guys down the line, but doesn't mean that these guys are illegitimate by any means. The gaps are becoming a bit bigger. The Boyds are done. The Reeds are done. We've got Finian and Saoirse here, and then David and his mess of relationships, and then Oswald and Jane. We've got the McIntyres. Yeah, it's quite spread out. We can't even see it, so we'll just focus on the main branch over here. I've recently started using a new app for those of you who, I guess, are interested in my ramblings, and it's the Sims tree. I am loving this because you can just add little bits of information, who their parents were, who their friends are, if they have any pets, their traits and aspirations, when they died, what year they got married. So yeah, I'm just having fun with this one. I can link it down below. I don't think I've shared it on the channel yet. Yeah, this one just provides a bit more information. So if you're new to this challenge and you want to see a bit more insight into the Sims, not every single Sim on here has their traits because I'm a bit lazy. But in comparison, like this one, you can just see when they were born, when they died, what year they got married, and the kids that they had. And this one goes into a little bit more depth. So we can see Colin Boyd here is, these are his parents. Apparently he doesn't have any friends. outside of his family members. We can see his traits, and we can see his aspiration, his life stage, what year he gets married, where he lives, his nationality. So this was the 1330s. I would say it went quite well. Not too many Sims passed away, and those that did were quite understandable. Some were devastating. I would have liked Caitlin to live a lot longer. She was so pretty, which isn't why she should live, but I really liked her, so that was a bit of a devastating blow for me. But yeah, this is our main line. We've got the first gen heir, the second gen heir, and the potential third gen heir. He will become a teen soon. And then we can start branching off. So maybe they will be capped at 5 kids. I don't know. Because once he becomes a teen, I want to avoid the issue I had with second gen. As much as I love Ada and Kenna, just the big gap difference kind of confuses me sometimes, because I'm like, oh, aren't they part of Gen 3? No. I think we'll just cap the children when he becomes a teen. We'll see. You can let me know. Should we do that? Rather than forcing Charlotte to have 12 pregnancies, just cap it when he becomes a teenager? Or should we have a few more kids to kind of safeguard against the Black Plague? Anyway, I'm pretty sure this video is long, and I apologize. I can never stop myself from rambling, apparently. If you enjoyed and this is your first time watching this recap, feel free to watch the other 3, or just watch the whole challenge. That's fun too. I hope you found it interesting. Honestly, these stats is always my favorite part. I just love to see the numbers change and grow, so on and so forth. I just love the spreadsheet. We are almost at a year for this challenge, which is insane. I don't think I've ever really been committed to a Sims 4 challenge ever. So I really do hope you have been enjoying it. If you've been following along, I really, really appreciate it. Anyway, I will stop my ramblings. I will hopefully see you next week for the beginning of the 1340s. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're having a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are in the world, and I will see you for the next one. Bye!